Hello, void and all who inhabit it. It's me, another 20-something still investing in teen dramas. I currently have a headache and I'm sitting on a roll of gift wrap, but I really miss doing these audio essays, so I figured I'd push through. I finally watched Selah and the Spades. There's one thing about me, it's that I never watch anything when it's new. And something that really stuck out to me was the choice to put Stella on the Ace spectrum. She never outright identifies as such, but she has a scene with Paloma that codes her as Ace.
I don't think I'm waiting for some right person. I just don't think I'm interested in the thing itself.
Also, real quick, I'm gonna probably be using aromantic and asexual interchangeably, but there is a difference. And saying that someone's on the Ace spectrum is the easiest umbrella term that I'll probably also be using. Anyway, this scene with Stella has been bugging me because coding a character as being on the Ace spectrum is a common choice we see with Black female characters who are adults. Their lack of romantic interest is used as rationale to spend less time building up their characters in dynamic ways. These women are devoid of romantic and sexual attraction, devoid of having romantic and sexual options as an explanation for depriving their character of something. Abby Mills' story couldn't lead to her being romantically involved with Ichabod Crane because it instead needed to focus on totally diminishing and eventually killing her off. This isn't a genuine representation of rounded characters who happen to be asexual. It's a targeted decision. And this trope isn't new. There's a plethora of examples of Black adult female characters being denied romantic partnership, oftentimes despite actor compatibility. But what I started thinking about was, what does it mean to see this trope repeated for teen girls and teen girl characters? For one, this trope amplifies a byproduct of the having to be twice as good to get half as far dynamic, which is the need to weed out any potential distraction from greatness. You can't be swayed from anything that would take you from your goal. Excellence demands focus and sacrifice. Stella very much fits into the box of a kid who would be impacted by that dynamic. She clearly is striving for perfection. She even says outright that she doesn't get distracted as proof that she is someone without fault. Going back to the scene that inspired this audio essay, she describes never having felt a desire to pursue someone romantically, in part because she doesn't understand why somebody would want to be crying in a bathroom. In that moment, her coded asexuality is used as rationale for why she doesn't have a romantic side plot. Despite the fact that the way they set up the whole Tila thing would have been perfect for that, or even her dynamic with Paloma. The scene where Selah says she doesn't get distracted, Maxie is throwing a lot of her past behavior in her face, and it's the mentioning of Tila that has her crack and say she doesn't get distracted, if I'm remembering correctly.
Huh? You think I haven't seen you mess up?
No, I don't get distracted.
You can't stand the idea of anyone giving someone something you can't give them. You can't. Not with me, not with Bobby, not with Neri, not with Tila. Especially not with Tila.
Now, at first, it's okay, well, clearly, there's some tense history here, but then there's a scene where Paloma is asking about Tila, and Stella seems not all that bothered to talk about Tila's last moments at the school, but she is less comfortable talking about her relationship with Tila. Both these scenes happen after Stella has established that she, quote-unquote, doesn't have a type. Stella's relationship with Tila, what drew Stella to Tila, even what draws her to Paloma, is never really explained. We're just told that whatever it is that drew her to either girl, that keeps her invested in either girl, definitely isn't any potential romantic attraction. Which, when you factor in the lack of insight we get to Stella's decision-making, is a character choice that goes above and beyond pay attention to books instead of boys. Or bays of any gender. Who is Stella? What does she want? Why does she act like that? Any potential opportunities to explain that beyond the pressure from her mom are removed from Stella's story. She is a spirit squad captain, seemingly detached from her squad, She is a former wallflower, currently the head of the most powerful faction with no explanation of that transition. She has one friend who she trusts so much as to have him guard the ledger that could get all of them thrown in jail. Like, sidebar, the Spade faction is the only faction doing something genuinely illegal. Anyway, when we finally get a moment to have Selah explain a crumb of her worldview, of her path, specifically, not a monologue about the bodily autonomy for all 17-year-old girls everywhere, she tells us that she's not interested in romance, has never felt the urge. If Selah had more character depth, this wouldn't irritate me as much, but she doesn't. I'll give you another example in the opposite end. Pearl from Little Fires Everywhere, the TV adaptation at least. Pearl is a character with minimal insight, but whose romantic intentions were key to a large portion of the mess and drama in her story specifically. The first few times we as the audience hear Pearl share her line of thinking, it's about her desire to lose her virginity. We don't, for example, learn about why she is okay with Lexi's campaign to be the biggest microaggressor of the year, even though their friendship is also a major part of her story. In both cases, romantic desire is used as a means of structuring these characters' motivation. I'm never distracted because I never feel nothing for nobody, or yes, I am in an entanglement, and that's part of my story that drives my behavior the most. Fuck everything else. The rationale behind adding drama rooted in relationships is pretty obvious. Drama equals good television or whatever. But what's the point in emphasizing a character's lack of romantic or sexual interest when it isn't part of their story and it's not folded into their character? Going back to Little Fires Everywhere, in the book, Pearl's mother Mia is coded as asexual, and in the narrative that becomes important because Mia struggles to help Pearl through her romantic issues because she can't relate. Notably though, in the book, Mia and Pearl's race is unidentified, which I want to point out because one, in the TV show where Mia and Pearl are definitively black, Mia's sexuality is changed as well, and that part of their story is erased. And two, for most black female characters who are coded as ace, it's not an addition to their character, but a subtraction. This coding allows for the removal of the potential for romance, which is ultimately a decision to remove potential empathy. Stay with me here. It's not that allosexual people can't empathize or sympathize with people on the ace spectrum. I would think Mia's difficulties with Pearl in the book could be relatable to many parents for a multitude of reasons. It's that black female characters are deliberately placed on the ace spectrum to remove belief in their ability to build strong relationships, and to even remove opportunities for these characters to build relationships in the first place. A message pushed through multiple spheres in society is that a lifelong romantic relationship is the strongest relationship you will have in life. Especially in teen media, the idea of romance being key to your story is also a really common message we see. The fault isn't necessarily in having a story that isn't focused on romance, but instead, removing a character's potential for romantic connection is used by storytellers to then unfairly question the character's potential to build connections with other characters throughout the story. So let's go back to Selah. Baby girl is an unlikable protagonist. Again, we see her relationship with her mom to gain more insight on her behavior, but we don't see the depth of her friendships with Maxie and Paloma or why she was drawn to Tila. I want to stress that we don't see this because we are told things like the scene where Stella describes not being interested in anyone. That conversation is prompted because of Paloma asking about Stella's relationship with Maxie. But what we see is Stella coercing Paloma into beating the shit out of that one kid. What we see is Stella sending Maxie into Fishtown alone even though she knows that's dangerous. What we see is Stella drugging Paloma at the end. What we see of her two major friendships, beyond that one cute montage in the woods, is mostly toxic. And what we're given to explain that is the strained relationship with her mother, these long glances at Stella's emotional reactions as she's internally processing things, and her explicitly naming her disinterest in romantic partnerships. In a society that says romantic relationships are the end-all be-all, a lot of people have difficulty wrapping their head around the idea of being asexual or aromantic. It doesn't add up. It seems like something's off, something's broken. When you make a character that is quote-unquote broken, it's easier to then make them a tool for the narrative as opposed to a rounded character with strong relationships. Something's off about them anyway, why should I invest in them? What we see of Selah makes us not want to invest in her. And I think we're supposed to, right? Like, that's why her name is in the title. That's why we get these scenes with her mom. Even if we don't like what she's doing, we're supposed to feel conflicted, supposed to want to be rooting for her to get better, and to do so through building up a strong friendship with Paloma and fixing her friendship with Maxie. Instead, Selah is set up early on as someone who doesn't experience deep emotional connections because she doesn't desire romantic ones. Despite being well known around the school, she is solitary. Maxie has this line about carrying the weight of Selah. Even in her closest friendship, there's a dynamic that keeps her separate. When Selah continues to harm her friends, it doesn't feel like the actions of a stressed girl desperate for control, but rather an uncaring girl who's calculated and selfish. Now, not all complicated black teen girls in media are portrayed this way, right? What about Puleng in Blood and Water? Or what about Rue from Euphoria? Well, neither one of them is coded as Ace. In fact, they actually both have romantic subplots, even if that's not the core aspect of their story. Puleng has the greatest aim of being one of the few dark-skinned teen black girls I've seen in media being pursued by multiple people. The other that immediately comes to mind being Moesha, whose show aired and was canceled before I lost all my baby teeth, so there has to be somebody in the 16 years in between. For Rue, it's a little shaky. Her relationship with Jules is framed as her latest addiction by the end of the season. You could analyze that relationship from a couple different angles, and while I'm hesitant about the narrative strength of Euphoria if they aren't going to implement a writer's room, that show is providing the opportunity to examine unhealthy relationships from multiple different angles. Is it important to note these more rounded examples? Of course. And we can still want better. The number of examples of where black girls can see a girl who looks like them navigating complex relationships should be more than can be counted on one hand. In 2010, when I sound ancient, when I was your age, there was Twilight and Vampire Diaries and The Hunger Games and Pretty Little Liars, books and TV series or films. In fact, there were several years with the opportunity to watch brand new editions of all four. There was the Mortal Instruments series, Vampire Academy, Beautiful Creatures. We were inundated with bland white girls who had multiple, often immortal love options, who had tight-knit friendships, who had epic journeys. I cannot think of one book with high acclaim and publicity that had a black girl main character pursued as strongly, whose story went on as long, that came out in 2010. They might have existed, but I wasn't finding them. So now, 10 years later, to so easily find black girls in stories where they have joy, where they have friends, where they have epic journeys that aren't centered around exploiting their trauma, it is imperative to me that these girls aren't simultaneously being dulled, that their potential isn't being limited because the storyteller sees them as a series of plot points instead of a rounded character. I didn't even watch Vampire Diaries, and I know about Bonnie Bennett, how her story was warped and squashed. I don't want the newest wave of black girl media to have more stories that end up like hers than not. There is importance to having stories where girls like you are seen having a wide range of relationships, friendships, all the ships, in a, I'm hesitant to say a healthy way, in a fantastical way, in a way that allows you to escape from reality into a narrative where you can come out of feeling more confident and comfortable about yourself, your agency, your wants, anything. That's taken away when storytellers decide that this teen is already a strong, independent black girl who doesn't need any emotional support. And the other thing, too, is there are black teen girls on the Ace spectrum. It's not fair to them to see representations of characters on the Ace spectrum who are flat, who have moments of joy snatched from them, who end up dead or written out of their own stories, who are seen as broken by the world inside and out of their narrative. In a society that heralds romantic relationships as the strongest partnerships you can have, there's real potential for negative impact when you decide to write a character who rejects that, blatantly or through their story, without taking care to still build up their other connections, to still show them as someone capable of making bonds and caring about others, although not romantically. If you made it to the end, thank you for making it to the end. Like I think I said in the beginning, I had to do like 3 takes of this. I just miss doing these essays, so this might not be like the strongest take, but whatever. We just spitballing into the universe. As I've been saying for like months now, it's been harder to consume media. I'm committing for July to try and watch something new every week. The upcoming week, when this is posted, I'm gonna watch Miss Juneteenth. Hopefully. No, definitely. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see when I'm back next. In the meantime, stay safe out there. I'll catch you in the next echo chamber.